A very good afternoon to everyone. My name is 𝗀𝗨𝗻𝗻 and I'm the host for today's masterclass. Welcome to the second masterclass of 2025, proudly brought to you by BEX Asia, organized by RX Singapore. I trust everyone is in good spirits and health, and for those of you who are celebrating Hari Raya, I hope you had a good time catching up with friends and family and had a lot of rendang and ayam masak merah. Now, BEX Asia this year returns for our 18th edition on the 3rd to 5th September at Sands Expo and Convention Center. BEX Asia is, of course, the anchor trade exhibition for the International Built Environment Week, co-organized by RX Singapore and BCA. This year's IBEW conference is titled the Expert Series and will focus on delivering case studies, best practices, and deep dives into the digital construction, productivity, sustainability, and green mark topics. So do save the dates for the 3rd to 5th September, and we hope to see you there. Now, for today's masterclass, we are pleased to have 𝗘𝘀𝘀𝗀𝗏 with us to share on the topic of environmental product declarations, something that is increasingly becoming mandatory in various regions around the world. While not universally required yet, many countries and regions have started to mandate EPDs for certain products, especially in the construction and building materials, to mandate EPDs for the construction and building materials sectors. For example, in Europe, the use of EPDs is becoming more common due to regulations like the European standard EN 15804. Now, presenting today's masterclass with the topic Understanding the Essentials of Air Filter EPDs, Environmental Product Declarations, is Jeremy Cheong, who is 𝗘𝘀𝘀𝗀𝗏's Asia Pacific's product executive, and he has a robust background in mechanical engineering with over 2 years of dedicated experience in product development and over a year in the air filtration industry. His academic credentials are further bolstered by a master's in innovation and design, reflecting his commitment to push the boundaries of what's possible in engineering and product development. Throughout his academic and professional career, Jeremy has spearheaded the development of multiple products across various domains, demonstrating a unique ability to translate innovative ideas into real-world solutions. So, Jeremy, I see you already have your camera on. Can I now invite you to unmute yourself?
Hello, everyone.
Hello, Jeremy. How you been doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you so much. Excited to see so many people attending.
All right.
Um, hmm,
So this is going to be an interesting one because I think a lot of us are still trying to get a lot more familiar with EPDs. So we're looking forward to the presentations. But before we begin the masterclass, please do note that you can ask questions during the Q&A. You can ask questions for this masterclass using the Q&A function in Zoom, which is at the bottom of your screen. And we shall address these questions at the end of the presentation. And this masterclass is also scheduled for 1 hour. Do note that the presentations will not be shared, the slides will not be shared. I know a lot of people ask this question during masterclasses, but the slides will not be shared at the end, but we will have Jeremy's contact and as well as 𝗘𝘀𝘀𝗀𝗏's contact. So if you have further queries about EPDs or air filtration solutions, you can get in touch with them. Now, Jeremy, if you are ready, I'll hand it over to you.
okay, thank you so much for the
Okay, over to you,
great
Jeremy.
introduction. Let me share my screen. Okay, thank you so much for the great introduction. So my name is Jeremy. I'm from 𝗘𝘀𝘀𝗀𝗏, and today I'll be talking about understanding the essentials of air filter environmental product declaration. Don't worry if you don't know what that actually means. I'll be going through that later. So this is what we'll be going through today for our little masterclass. I'll be going over two broad topics. So introduction to EPDs and LCAs. So that's the first topic where we'll be covering things such as, what are EPDs and LCAs, what do they access, some system boundaries in more specifically to air filters, and what is the development processes to getting EPDs, followed by, everybody always asks, why do we need EPDs? Why is it important? And I'll be talking a lot about Scope 3, some of the trends in different industries and goals, as well as what are the benefits by using products with EPD itself. So let's get right into things. So what's a LCA? So before we start on what is the EPD, we need to understand what the LCA is. So LCA stands for life cycle analysis, commonly known also as life cycle analysis or assessment. It's a way to assess the environmental impacts associated with the life cycle of a product, process, or service. So what do we mean when we are talking about life cycle? We are talking everything from the raw materials. Where do you get your raw materials? How is the material transported to factories? And then we come in the form of manufacturing. So manufacturing your product, what kind of energy that's being used, what's the energy mix, what kind of chemicals that are used, and then the packaging onwards to delivery to customers, followed by the usage by the customers themselves, and the energy involved in that, as well as the end of life. So this can come in the form of many ways, such as recycling, incineration, depending on how the product is, the end of life is conducted and by the different users. So from here, once we get the LCA, the life cycle analysis, then we are able to construct the EPD. An example is on the right is what EPD would look like from EPD International. So EPD stands for Environmental Product Declaration. So this is a report generated based on the LCA that is comparable, objective, and third-party verified to show both the good and bad of the environmental performance of the product and services in a transparent way. So what do we mean by comparable, objective, and third-party verified? So it's comparable because based on the specific products, there are certain product category rules. And all products that are following these product category rules will be comparable to one another. And this is also backed up by the data that is actually used to create these reports and analysis. So we are not just pulling things out from the air, as well as it's third-party verified. So that means that companies can't just claim whatever they like in their EPDs themselves. It has to be verified by a third party. That way, when consumers are buying these products that have EPDs in them that are third party verified, they can be ensured that the information is not only accurate, but it is also not something that any company can just make up. Okay, so when we talk about LCAs and assessments of the life cycle, what are we assessing when we talk about LCAs? So there are three broad categories here. We have the environmental impact, resource use, and waste and output. So for the environmental impact, there are many things that we assess. So everything from global warming potential, so that would be the CO2 that's produced, ozone layer depletion, acidification of oceans and eutrophication of oceans land, ozone, as well as depletion of fossil fuels and non-fossil fuels resources. When we're talking about resources themselves, we're talking things like renewable energy, non-renewable energy, and where are all these sources actually coming from? And as well as what about the raw materials? Are they renewable? Are they non-renewable? What kind of secondary materials we're using, as well as what kind of fuels are we using during our production stage, or things related to production? Are we using things like solar? Are we using things such as natural gas? All of these are assessed in the resource use category. Last but not least, we have the waste and output themselves. So for the waste and outputs themselves, we have many things such as the hazardous, sorry, let me go back one more slide. Hazardous, non-hazardous radioactive waste, whether the waste you're generating is hazardous, whether after the product has been used, are they reused? As well as the materials, are they recycled? Are they incinerated? For energy, all of these goes into what we are assessing when we're talking about waste and output. So since today we're not just talking about EPDs themselves, we are also talking about air filters because we're from Chemfield and we sell air filters. We're talking a bit about specifically to air filters. So for air filters, we do a cradle to gate with options for our system boundaries. And what this actually means is that it's quite similar to a term you call cradle to grave, but cradle to grave focus a lot on maintenance and end of life. This focuses more on the manufacturing and raw materials with some elements of cradle to grave. So that's what it actually means. So we cover these areas such as raw materials, transport, and manufacturing. So this is before the product goes out to customers. Transportation and installation. So this is when the products are transported to the customer sites and installed, and following that is the use and operational phase where energy is used up. And then we have the C1, C4, which is the end of life stage where depending on the filter, you can be incineration, it can be recycled, things of this sort. And that's where the part D comes into play. So this is what the development process looks like when we're talking about EPDs. It is not a simple process because there are many steps with many inputs and outputs to collect. So typically it takes about 6 to 12 months for one EPD. Yes, that's a lot of work. So first you gotta do the PCR. So I've mentioned this previously in the first part of my slides. Product category rules. So these are some of the rules that govern the specific for the specific product you're doing the EPD for and the product scope. And after that you have established that, you can go into collecting your inputs and outputs themselves. So this means collecting data along the entire supply chain of the product itself. So everything from where you're getting your raw materials, where you're manufacturing them, both internally as well as externally. So these may be suppliers. This is followed by the modeling. So after all of these data is collected, you go into this modeling software where we do different calculations and analysis on the environmental impacts from each component of the product. After which, we prepare the EPD documentations with the different reports and different supporting documents. After which, they are sent to a verifier to verify whatever we have placed in the report. It is correct, appropriate, and accurate. And after which, after that we've cleared all of these, we can then do the EPD registration and actually get it approved by the verifier as well. So as you can see, there are quite a few steps when it comes to getting EPD as well. And because of those quite a few steps, these are a lot of times challenging. So what are some of the challenges we have when doing EPDs? This would be different manufacturing location, different data sets. So as you know, supply chains can be quite complicated, especially for large companies where we have a lot of material coming from different suppliers, different countries. So a lot of the time, the data sets might be incomplete or different, as well as we have to speak a lot of the times to external suppliers themselves, as well as internal parties to get them to share with us this information. And sometimes that takes a little bit of convincing. And when people do not know much about EPD themselves or LCAs or how to collect data, we have to actually guide them in collecting this data. And that's where the LCA practitioner kind of comes in to kind of guide companies and suppliers on gathering this data. And we have to follow certain standards. So ISO 14025, EN 15804. So this is a very time-consuming and process and requires specialized knowledge and training of our LCA practitioners. Last but not last two would be the complex modeling and calculation. As you know, we take a lot of inputs to create those LCA reports. So there's quite a bit of calculation and modeling that needs to go into place. Last but not least, the data confidentiality, because some suppliers would like to keep some of their data private. So we got to work together with them to find out what we can share, what we cannot share, and really walk through with them, why do we need this and how are we going to use this. So next, I'll be going into why are EPDs important. If you spend so much time and money and effort, you have to know why it's important. And I'll be going through some of the trends in the industries, in various industries, to show you why EPDs are important, and hopefully you'll be convinced. So to give a little bit of our background of why EPDs are important, we need to take a look at emission sources. And this will come into play and become very important as I walk through the different the rest of the slides as we go on. So for emission sources, there are, as you can see on here, you have scope 1 and scope 2. So scope 1 would be direct emission sources. So these would be emission based on what a company's like own manufacturing, these kind of things would be scope 1, direct, right? And then we also have indirect, which is when companies purchase electricity for their own use. But beyond this scope 1 and scope 2, we have this thing called scope 3, which is also indirect, but comes in two forms. First, you have the upstream activities. So this is when companies like Canfield, like we buy media or we buy frames or we transport certain raw materials to our factories themselves for assembly or processing. All of these come in the form of upstream activity, and this is considered indirect. All of these parts have an emission as well. So then we have, after that, the downstream activities, which is when after the product is produced, when customers use those products, when customers recycle or incinerate the products, when the products are transported to the customers themselves, or when they're in the use phase of the product, all of these add to a emission source and considered downstream itself. All right, so let's really get into things. Why are EPDs important internally to companies, right? You have all these information that you see on the left, things like raw materials, transportation, operational energy use, right? What can we do with this information? Well, with an EPD or doing your own LCA, some of the things you can do with this information is that you can have full visibility of your entire supply chain and where are the greatest environmental impacts. From there, you are able to take the most beneficial, you can take measures in the most beneficial way to reduce those environmental impacts. So you're no longer wasting resources on different policies, on actions to solve problems that are not big. You want to target the biggest problems first with the best policies so that you can be a more sustainable company as which is gaining popularity in recent years by more or less all industries at this point of time. And you can reduce your environmental impact. So some of the trends in the industry today, right? So in 2020, McKinsey did a survey and they surveyed executives and investment professionals, and more than half of them agreed that ESG programs, so ESG programs mean environmental, social, and governance program, create shareholder value. So that's the perception from all these executives and professionals themselves. And here you can see some of the charts, and one of the trends you can very easily see from the graph itself is that they are all increasing with time, and it's probably even higher now. So if you look at the short-term value from 2009 to 2019, they've all been increasing, and as well as the perceived long-term value for all these programs have also been on the rise. But something that you would note in the environmental programs is that among all three, the long-term value of the environmental program, it's almost 100% in 2019. So we can see from this survey that almost universally, the environmental programs do have a perceived value, creating shareholder value. And when companies perceive things that are of value, they are going to invest in them, right? They are going to choose them to increase their company's value. And that's where EPDs and come in, whereby um, where they're going to start choosing things that are in line with their environmental programs, and EPDs are going to be one of them. So why I say EPDs are going to be one of them. So let's see something a bit more recent themselves. So this is by 𝗘𝗀𝗏𝗏 that says that more than 70% says delivering on corporate sustainability goals and commitments is a top procurement driver. So companies are already starting to choose products and services that are going to help them in their corporate sustainability goals, right? And if you can help companies achieve those corporate sustainability goals, you're going to be on top against your competitors. And they're going to choose these products that have sustainability goals, whether that means like you are using less energy, whether you be recycling, all of these sustainability goals different companies have. And we're going to take a look at some of those trends and what companies are looking to do when they're looking at corporate sustainability goals. So let's look at if you are in the building industry standards, let's look at some of them, right? So we can look at LEED, right? Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. So this is a USA/international standard. So in LEED 4.1, you can already see they have 2 points by using EPDs and LCAs in the materials and resource section. And as in their according to their standards, the more specific and if the EPD and LCAs are third-party verified, you get more credits or you get the full credit of 2 points. So here we can already see that LEED themselves are already encouraging buildings or people in charge of building owners or operators to use products that are EPD verified and they are product specific. Here in Singapore, where we are at, we have the BCA Green Mark, and in 2021 version of the BCA Green Mark, you can get up to 2 points by using EPDs in the under the innovation and carbon section. And here, so right here in Singapore, they're already encouraging more building owners and operators to use innovative products that have things like EPDs and LCAs. Let's look at across the region here in APAC, right? We have the Green Star in Australia. EPD can obtain up to 19 points under the Sustainable Product Section, Green Star Interior version 1.2. Even under the Build and Design section, you can get up to 3 points with EPDs, as well as if you're looking at LCA credit and embodied carbon credit, you can get 7 or 3 points as well. So this is in Australia. But it's not only Australia, but Vietnam also has certain building guidelines or building standards that encourage LCAs. So LCAs are mentioned as a method to measure the material sustainability value under the sustainable material section, where you can get to up to 5 points based on the type of LCA and EPD you have. So the EPDs are also a sustainability factor. So that's when they that's a way that they calculate how sustainable are the materials you're using in your buildings themselves. And you get a higher multiplication score when you are externally third-party verified. And the more product specific, like LEED, as well as third-party verified, you get more points. So we can see that, among just these 4 different building standards already, they are already encouraging building owners and operators to use products that have EPDs and LCAs that are externally reviewed and product specific. So some of the buildings that already have LEED verification, we can see this in healthcare. This is Cleveland Clinic. Not to worry if you don't know who they are. They are like they mainly operate in America, but they have hospitals all over the world. They are a non-profit academic research center, first opened in 1921, with 23 hospitals and 276 outpatient facilities across the globe. So this is an international clinic, right? And in 2018, they have already begun certifying their health education campus, as well as the clinic in London as well for LEED. So for them, they are already going for LEED, and you can see that they have not just started, they've already gotten 6 gold, 9 silver, and 3 LEED certified buildings. So this is one example of how these building standards are used in the healthcare area. Now we're going to talk about Scope 3 emissions in life science, and this is why when I first started this section, I actually spent a bit of time on context, right? So I have three life science companies here. I have Pfizer, Roche, as well as Merck. These are some of the biggest life science companies in the world with billions in revenue, so they are certainly not small. So if you look at Pfizer, let's start with Pfizer. So currently their Scope 3 emission takes up 80% of their greenhouse emissions. And let's see what their goals are. Their goals is to reduce this Scope 3 emissions by 90% by 2040. As well as their goal is going to have the goods that they purchase and their suppliers to have their own greenhouse gas reduction. Roche, similarly to Pfizer, but even higher greenhouse gas emission in terms of Scope 3, where it's 95%. 95% of the greenhouse gas emissions are Scope 3. And from 2020 to 2025, so that means right now, this year, they want to cut that by 15%. And by 2029, they're looking to reduce the environmental impact of their operations and products by 50%. Merck, very similarly to Pfizer themselves, approximately 80% of Merck's greenhouse gas emissions are Scope 3, so exactly same as Pfizer. And they are looking to reduce that by more than 50% by 2030. And by 2040, they're looking to be climate neutral in their operations in all the 3 scopes. So Scope 1, 2, and 3. So what's the commonality of all of these 3 big life science companies? Well, basically, almost all of their greenhouse gas emissions are Scope 3. And almost all of them are looking to reduce their Scope 3 emissions by at least 50% in the next in the next 5 years or so. So they have no choice but to look at ways to reduce their Scope 3. And EPDs are one of the ways for companies to come in and reduce their Scope 3. Why? Because they can identify the environmental impact of things that they are buying. So they are going to start choosing things that have a lower environmental impact. And the only way that they know and they are informed is through EPDs, because it gives you the entire life cycle cost of the product itself. And this way, they can help to direct or choose better suppliers based on the EPDs that are generated. And that way, they have a they're able to make an informed choice in these purchasing decisions and work towards their sustainability goals that they're looking towards in the next 5 to 10 years. Let's look at Apple itself, one of the biggest companies in the world right now. Right, this is from their 2024 environmental report. As you can see, right, 59% comes from product manufacturing, scope 3, 29% product use, also scope 3, 9% from product transportation, scope 3, end of life, scope 3, less than 1%, as well as business operation, 3%. So when you add all of these things up, you see that for people like Apple, one of the biggest companies in the world, 99%, more than 99% of their emissions are scope 3. So it makes essentially everything of their emissions. And so the goals by 2030, so within the next 5 years, they want to reduce the scope 1, 2, and 3 by 75% as compared to 2015 levels. So for a company like Apple, where more than 99% of their emissions are scope 3, they will have to focus on cutting scope 3 emissions. And that's a big goal for them. And some of the ways they are looking towards to cutting these emissions is to, well, seek certain technological solutions that are low in carbon in order to address their carbon testing processes, as well as shifting transport modes for product shipments, so moving from instead of air shipment to ocean shipment. So, but for people like Apple, the only way they can actually seek those technologies with low carbon emissions, or their product shipment being shipped by sea and having a low carbon emission as a result, is that if the product, they know the product they are buying is going to have these things, right? How much carbon are we, what is the carbon emission as a result of us buying this product? Apple is going to start asking themselves that, because they want to work towards their sustainability goals. And that is where EPDs can come in, because they give companies a full bird's eye view of the entire supply chain of the product that they are buying. Let's look at Google, one of the biggest companies in the world as well. And in specific, look at the data center kind of segment. So for them, similar to the life science companies, their scope 3 emissions, as you can see at the bottom of the screen, makes up about 75% of their emissions, right? And for people like Google, what are their goals as well? So in 2021, their scope 1, 2, and 3, they want to reduce that by 50% within the next 5 years. And with, like Apple, with 75% of their carbon emissions being from scope 3, they're going to have to look at that area. And that's where EPDs come in, and they can make an informed choice. And Google doesn't just sit on their laurels and make empty promises. They have in fact already gone ahead with these things. So let me show you this. So this is from Google itself. So as of 2023, over 300 Google officers have already achieved LEED certification. So that is also why I pointed out in previous slides about LEED itself, because it's one of the certifications that is used by big companies like Google, and they are rewarding EPD and LCA usages. And as you can see from the graph on the left, over 71% is already platinum rated. Then we have 165 with gold, and the rest will be others with 64 of them itself. And in 2023, only a few years ago, they've already received 16 Google offices and facilities have received LEED certification, with 6 of them with the platinum rating, another 6 with the gold rating as well. So Google has already gone ahead with these kinds of building rating systems. So, in summary, we're going to talk about benefits for EPDs for all. So I've already briefly touched upon all of these already. So firstly, if you have an EPD, you're going to be a preferred supplier. You're going to get a preferred supplier status from companies that are actually going to buy your products. So as you can see from all the industry trends and companies that I've showed you already, um, all of them have sustainability goals, and all of them have want to make big strides in their sustainability goal, 50% reduction or 60% reduction or even more than that. And with, as you can see, for all these companies, with almost all of their carbon emissions being from scope 3, or majority of their carbon emission being from scope 3, they are going to want to choose products that are lower in carbon, right? And the only way that they can know that the products they are buying are lower carbon is that if companies that produce them are able to prove that their products are lower than the rest. If you have no information, there's nothing these people can go on. And when you help these companies, they are going to choose you, right? You help the companies that help themselves. You help companies help themselves. And a lot of them have these sustainability reports. They report on how much carbon they're producing from different processes, what they're doing to reduce carbon. And all of these will help in their producing of the report when they are able to calculate it. And companies that are able to help these companies meet their goals are going to be preferred. And if you are a company that is already interested in sustainability and showing that you are not just talk, but you actually walk the talk, EPDs are a way to show the world and market yourself as a sustainable company. So because you yourself can use these EPDs to identify where along your supply chain has the biggest environmental impact and focus your efforts towards them with the greatest impact. So that way your efforts are not wasted, they are efficient, and it shows that to people that are companies that are interested in working with sustainable companies, that you are really working towards it and you're not just marketing or talk. Last but not least, you have now a unique selling point. So with so many products out there, with so many different feature sets and everything, EPDs can become a unique selling point to differentiate your product from the products of all the different other products that are being sold by competitors. And with that, I've come to the end of my slides. Thank you very much for your attention, everyone. Do make sure to follow us on our different social medias on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, as well as Instagram. We thank you very much for listening today. But 𝗨H𝗱𝗲𝗿𝗀 has already mentioned this, but let me mention it again. If you would like a copy of the slides, or if you really have any burning questions that are not being answered in this little masterclass itself, please write into the apec.webinar@canfield.com, and we'll try to get back to you as soon as possible with the answers that you need. And that is my second last slide, and now we can go to the Q&A session. I hope that we have some interesting questions that I can answer. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Jeremy, for that very insightful session on telling us what EPD is all about, the life cycle analysis and how that really matters to, I guess, not just the built environment, but to every single industry out there, right? Because I was looking through our list of attendees, and we actually have people from Malaysia who are manufacturing companies who manufacture the products. So all this will go into the calculation towards their own scope 3 emissions. So if I'm manufacturing paint in Malaysia, for example, right? If I want to do my own scope 3 reporting, I will know what are the inputs that go into manufacturing my product, and from there, if I have all the suppliers sending me information about their content or rather their EPDs, it makes it easier for me,
Of course,
right?
yes.
Okay, so we have a number of questions here. Some of them came from during registrations, as well as for those of you who have questions, that you have burning questions, you want to clarify your understanding of EPDs or air filtration services solutions, please use the Q&A function within BEX, within the Zoom interface here. It'll be at the bottom of your screen. But first of all, I'll take the questions that was first submitted via registrations. So there is someone from a property development firm, and I think you mentioned, Jeremy, that to create the EPD, it's a complex process. It can take anything between 6 to 12 months. That
Yes.
means that includes cost to you as a manufacturer, right? Because you have to get it certified by a third party. So this person asked, he's interested to know the cost implication when using an EPD air filter. I suppose they are asking, between an air filter supplier that has an EPD and one that doesn't have EPD, what are the cost implications?
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting question. Obviously, different air filter suppliers supply air filters at different costs to customers, obviously, right?
Mhm.
Because the way we manufacture filters are all different. But for us, specifically here at Camfield, yes, we do put a lot of time, effort, and resources into getting the EPDs for our products. But we do not pass that cost down to the consumer itself. So it doesn't change the price whether you are buying from us a filter that's EPD certified or not. Yeah. And to simply put, we take the cost themselves because here at Camfield, we are serious about sustainability. It's in our owner's directive, and we want to work towards that. And yeah, since day one, yeah. And so no, the answer is no. We'll still keep the price the same.
But the question then is everything within your product lines, does every single item have a EPD attached to it?
No, not every single item in our
Mhm,
line has an EPD attached to it.
mhm,
Obviously, as you know, it's quite a complex process to get even a single EPD,
mhm,
and every EPD is attached to a single product from
mhm.
a single manufacturing location. So
Right.
it's very hard for us to cover every single product that we produce, but we are constantly adding more products to that are EPD certified.
Mm.
Uh,
So it's an ongoing process. So that
yes, it
means,
is our
so even if let's say I have this air filter is the same specifications, I mean, it's the same model, and one was manufactured, say, in your Penang office, in your factory, and another one was manufactured in Europe, they will have require different EPDs?
Yes, yes, they
Mm.
require different EPDs because, as I've already mentioned,
Mhm.
inside the EPD themselves, there is a transportation component.
Mm.
So when the factories, for example, we have a factory in Slovakia, they're gonna get their supplies from Europe. And so the transportation costs and environmental costs for them will be different. For example, as compared to, for example, our plant in Ipoh, if we
Mm.
were to um, get supplies from Europe themselves, it's so much further than if you flew
Yes,
a
yes.
yeah, right. It's so much further.
That
So
makes
all of
sense.
these go into when we calculate and as well as when we sell to customers as well, right? So that's the use phase as well. So in our Ipoh plant, we mainly serve the APAC market. Of course,
Mm.
we can do it globally, but when our customers are located in APAC versus if we had to sell to a
Mm.
customer that is in Europe, that's going to be different as well.
Yeah, the energy input cost will also be different, right? Because
Yes,
it could be,
yes.
yeah, so that makes sense why it's different. Next question I have from a someone from CBM Solutions. What figures do we need from manufacturers or suppliers when we want to compute a LCA?
Oof. Well, that is you need quite a bit of information, but I will give a very brief rundown what you will need from suppliers and when you're doing an LCA. So there are two big buckets of information you will need. one on processes and the other on transportation. So for processes, will be things like what materials and where the materials are coming from. Things like where, as in, because of the energy tariffs are different in all different locations, different countries have different energy tariffs. Certain areas are cheaper than others, and what is the energy mix that is going into the energy that you are using to produce this certain material or process, right? And that goes into the calculation of the LCE itself. So for example, if you're using more green energy like solar, wind, as compared to just using 100% fossil fuels, that calculation, that goes into the calculation itself. So that's more on the process side. So it also includes things like the what kind of chemicals that are being used, and those have an environmental impact, of course, right? And for the other big bucket would be transportation. So where are you transporting any raw materials from? Where are you transporting raw materials to, right? To, for example, are you bringing in the the raw materials from Europe or America and bring it to Asia, right? That's going to make a big difference from sourcing the product from directly within Europe itself. So all these are some of the examples of information that you will need to gather from suppliers to create your own EPD. That's why I said it's quite a complex and long process.
Yeah, yeah, I can understand, right? I mean, and because every single item you put together, even if you say it's air filter, it might requires 10 different, input materials and seven different manufacturing processes, and it all just, cascades down, right?
Yeah, and then you got to calculate everything after
Mm-hmm.
that. So it's not just collecting all the info and bam, report, but
Yeah,
collecting all the info, generating everything,
yeah.
calculating everything. Yeah.
It's going to be a tough life for someone like me because I failed maths, so I'm like pretty poor at calculation.
Oh, well, that's why we have experts to
Exactly.
do it.
Now, we have a comment come question from a live attendee. So, great session explaining what LCA-based EPDs are and how they may be used by business. So, kudos to you, Jeremy. But he also said Jeremy showed the examples only for GHGs, greenhouse gases, and even then, scope 3. May also be helpful to know some of the other environmental parameters as well. So, that's more of a comment than a question, I suppose.
Yeah, yes, I did focus a lot of greenhouse gas emissions as well as scope 3.
Mm-hmm.
But as you saw in the one of my previous slides when I was going through the LCA assessment, it's not just the greenhouse gas emissions that we are that's inside the LCA assessment. We're also talking about uh, environmental impacts such as acidification of the oceans, right? Things like resource use for water is calculated in there as well. So all of these different things are also included in the LCA analysis itself, and ozone as well, all these things. So I've just only touched on like a small portion of things because it's quite a lengthy process. Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose you'd want to get in touch with Jeremy separately to have a longer understanding on EPDs and the various environmental parameters. Now, Jeremy, you mentioned that with EPD certified air filtration products, one of the benefits for developers is that they can gain additional points, 2 points for LEED as well as 2 points for green mark. But what about the use of it in a post construction phase, right? A building is really operational, you have tenants moving in, and air filter is something that you have to replace on a regular basis, right? So how else would that contribute, because I could say, all right, I'll get a green mark when I'm building this new hotel, for example, I will source for an EPD certified air filtration products, but do you still need to do that after the building is up and operational?
Okay, great question. Um, well, choosing a good air filter, as in a filter that's EPD, um, goes just goes beyond just the green mark or the LEED certification itself. So part of what is calculated in the EPD, you'll be able to see it as well, is the energy consumption related to using the filter. So as you know, there is this thing called pressure drop when we're talking about air filters. The air filter the air filter itself doesn't consume any energy, of course. It is actually the fan that pushes the air through the air filter that consumes energy. And when you have a air filter that uses more, has a higher pressure drop, your fan is going to have to work harder and your energy costs are going to go up over time. And as a developer or a building owner or operator, no one wants to pay more money to run their air conditioning, right? and the energy costs related to running a HVAC system, we have calculated for it in the operational phase, about 70% of the cost is actually related to energy, and 30% of it is actually of the energy is related to the air filters that you're using itself. And compared to the rest where we're talking about the ducts or the kind of heating system you're using, all of these, or cooling coils, these things all contribute to the energy costs, but they're very hard to change, right? You can't just remove the duct, change the duct works, and do heavy construction. But with air filters, as you mentioned already, you can just pop them in and out, and that can really reduce your energy costs over time. And for Canfield as ourselves, it's quite well known that our filters cost a little bit more than our competition, but we believe that even though you pay a little bit more for the air filter at the start, you save money over time as well. So that's where we have this TCO kind of argument as well. And you're going to have to want a good air filtration efficiency for your people in the building itself as well, because you can look it up through the research as well that having good air quality within the building itself actually prevents things like illnesses, people getting sick, and that's going to harm your productivity. So it's more than just the LEED certification in EPD itself when it comes to air filters.
Yes, of course, that makes sense also, right? Because, increasingly also the Scope 3, I know the SGX has pushed Scope 3 reporting back by a year, but it's something that's going to continue coming. But beyond just the Scope 3 as well as the green certifications, there's also the financial implications, right? If you use a better quality air filter that, is really assessed to operate at a more efficient level, then you do have that cost savings in the operational cost savings. That. Now, that brings us to about the end of this web masterclass here today. And I thank everyone for the participation. And of course, thank Jeremy for sharing his insights. But Jeremy, do you have any last words for our attendees here?
Those of last words, I just really want to thank you very much to everyone that attended today's little webinar. I hope that you have learned much from the webinar, and if you have any questions, feel free to contact us at the email that I dropped there, and we'll be more than happy to answer any questions or queries that you have here at Canfield.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Jeremy. And for ladies and gentlemen, don't also forget that 3rd to 5th September this year, we have International Built Environment Week Expert Series. And in that session, we will also have a track on sustainability where we will have a deep dive on Scope 1 to 3 calculations, as well as, best practices and key mistakes people normally make in Scope 1 to 3 calculations. If you're interested, do keep us in touch with IBEW through our website, as well as BEX Asia through our website and our social media channels on LinkedIn and also on Facebook. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much for your time today. We look forward to seeing you again at the next masterclass. Do keep in touch with us. Look out for our emails to announce the next masterclass, as well as on our LinkedIn. Till then, have a good day ahead, and I'll see you again in the next one.